Michael Walsh, welcome back to Paper Napkin Wisdom. Thrilled that you're back.
Well, thanks for having me back.
Well, I love the series that we're doing. And for everybody listening, I want to give you a quick rundown of where we are. This is now the sixth part in this series. And I'm not going to tell you how many pieces there are because there are a lot, but there's sixth part in the series. We started talking about the four danger zones. After talking about the four danger zones, we went on to talking about what really were the four danger zones, and they related to people and how every time we add a person to our organization as we get bigger and bigger, it's an exponential increase in the number of one-on-one relationships and the complexity behind them. When thinking about people, we talked about the four driving influences of human behavior: survive, thrive, connect, and adapt, which led us to this idea. And this is a really profound one, that we have to rethink the core. Rethinking the core, the old core of the business being results are driven by customer value, and your profit and your people sort of feed those two things. But we have to rethink that our results and our teams build profit, value, and most importantly, the professional and personal growth of our team themselves. It's the sixth P, so to speak. Then we talked about the social contract and how there's two sides of the social contract, thinking about that dynamic: one on the owner company side, and second for individual employees. On the owner company side, we had generate individual results, generate collective results, build a strong culture, make progress towards the company's larger purpose. On the individual side, compensation, of course, professional training, growth, access to meaningful work, and access to develop meaningful relationships. And I think we take that number four for granted. We talked about that at length in our last episode. Today, all of this brings us to hiring smart for your expertise-based business. And spoiler alert, every business is an expertise-based business. Doesn't matter what you think, you're selling expertise. And hiring right is half the game. What did you mean by that?
Everybody works on, well, how do I get my system sorted out? How do I make sure that my product is priced properly? All the different aspects of what it takes to grow and run an effective business. And it's appropriate that they focus on all those things. But in any service-based business, especially a service-based business that actually relies on the expertise or growing expertise of the people, literally half of your success will be a function directly of who you get in the door. And the other
Yeah.
half is what you do once you got them in the door. But I got to tell you, until you get them in the door, like you get the wrong people in the door. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how friendly they are with each other. If I'm building an orchestra and the people are really friendly and they're nice and their heart's in the right spot and they just can't perform, like they don't know how to use their instruments, the musical instruments, you're in a situation where you're not going to have a very good orchestra. You need the skills and talents of your people, but you also need them to be able to work with each other. Because if I get incredibly talented people, but they're all fighting with each other, I'm still going to have a mess on my hands. You need the right people in the room, literally half the game.
Nobody, and we talked about this before we started today, nobody goes out there thinking they're hiring badly. I think everybody thinks that they're doing the best they can. So somebody out there's somebody's listening going, Michael Govan, I'm doing the best I can. I'm getting the best I can, but I'm still, I don't feel like, I don't think, I think very few people feel like they're nailing this piece, right? Very few people think they're nailing this piece consistently. And at the same time, everybody's conscious of it. So why is this so hard?
Well, great question. I mean, the thing that I'm finding is that it's probably the biggest frustration people have that I hear from business owners. They can't find the right people for the roles that they want. That they want to. I need somebody at this level, not way higher that costs me too much, not way lower that I need to grow them into it because I don't have the time to grow them in. I just can't find. Great people are really hard to find. In fact, I'll even pay the premium, but I can't find the people that are great. Probably one of the most common things. Like you said, nobody says, I think I'll get people that are not that good and I'll just pay them less and life goes on. No, it's called I get the best that I can afford. Okay. And so basically there's two reasons why they run into that. Okay. The first one is that they don't aim high enough. Okay. Two fundamental reasons. This is the first one. They're not aiming high enough. And the second one is saying yes to somebody out of desperation, even though you know they're not a great fit, or you're hoping they are a great fit and you choose to ignore the telltale signs. So that, maybe I'm wrong, and it's fascinating to see what's there. Because it's less, see, attracting the right fit person is less about who's available and more about your perspective on both recruiting and selection of your people.
I think that's really, really important. And how much of this also relates to I mean, what I think that there are people what I've observed their organizations and I've said, man, they really hire well. But then you get in closer and it's like, oh, maybe it's not so good. Maybe it's not. And you talk to their CEO, and I've talked to their CEO after watching them from the outside, and it's like, no, no, we're always struggling with it. This is something that is an always thing. It's never owned, right? It's something you have to do every day. You have to do right every day. And I think focusing on your six key attributes is a pathway to reset aiming high enough or aiming right for the right roles, right?
Absolutely. And because if you don't do that, see, one of the biggest things is if I settle for somebody who's not quite the best fit, the costs are large. I'll talk myself, well, they're good enough for now. And listen, there's just no better out there. I don't know how to find somebody that's better that's out there, so I have to deal with what I've got. And as a result, what you've got is you get uneven performance, and sometimes
Hmm.
you get, either active or passive dissent. Okay. You'll get things like bare minimum effort. Okay. And passive dependency is another thing that can show up. So there's a number of different aspects of what's happening. It's interesting because in some places right now, one of the things that I'm noticing is like there's one woman who owns a firm that actually helps fund businesses in the U.S. And she needs people in the office 3 days a week, and she's fine to work from home for a couple of days a week, as far as that's concerned. She's looking for a hybrid arrangement, and she's getting people that say, "Yep, yep, no problem. I can do that, no problem." And now what's happening is as she hires people, there's always an excuse, and what she's got is people that are coming in maximum 1 day a week, and frankly, it's just not working. Like the nature of the teamwork that they have in their office, they need to be connected at least 3 of those days, and
Hmm.
this doesn't work. And she's pulling her hair out. She's like, yeah, but I asked them and they say yes, and then what's happening is they're just not, and I don't know what to do with that. It's like she's not alone. I'm seeing this a lot. That's just one example, or hiring somebody hoping that they can grow into the role, or hiring somebody that seems to be really good at the role, but they're not as good with people. And so what you find is that you almost get mercenaries in there. They'll, I'll do this and I'll do that, and but don't ask me to work with these people here or that people there, or follow your instructions because I'm going to do this my way. As far as that's concerned, it's interesting because sometimes you have the pendulum swinging in on behalf of the employer, and sometimes the pendulum swings on behalf of the employee. Now, even to think in those terms is based in an us them. So that thinking by itself is actually part of the problem, you know? Um,
Hmm.
and so the key is I have to change my thinking as far as that's concerned.
And this is where rethinking the core comes in so much. I don't want to pass by two things that you said that won't be common terminology to a lot of people.
Mhm.
You said active and passive dissent. Now we can understand active dissent. It's, you know, the proverbial telling you where to go. But what's passive dissent?
When I say absolutely everything's fine to your face, and I'll bitch about you to my neighbors behind your back. And
Yeah,
you'll never
right.
hear it, because I'm smart enough to only say it to other people who feel similar to me. But I got to tell you, it's fascinating to see what's done to your face and what's said behind your back. And
And that's
or
really tough.
I may not even say anything to anybody. I'm going to do the minimum I can because I just don't agree with you.
Yeah. And it's really hard to find passive dissent because the people who engage in it really only do it with people who agree. And in the larger organization, going back to those people, those one-on-one relationships really create a moat between you and information you don't that people don't want you to have. What is passive dependency look like?
Um, well, here I'll wait for instructions and do exactly what's asked and no more. That's literally passive dependency. It's like, I'll act like what do you need next? What do you need this or that, whatever. But basically what I'm doing is getting you to do my thinking for me. And so I show up like I'm doing a really good job, but I'm not prepared to use my own independent thought. Now, think about this for a second. If you're in an expertise-driven services company, you need people's expertise at the table, and you need a hunger to learn and grow, and you need a willingness. There's a whole bunch of things that you need, and we'll get into those a little bit later. But I got to tell you, without that, this doesn't work.
No.
So that's what I mean by that.
And really, nobody, okay, you're not hiring people to come into your organization to waste their time and waste yours, right? And people, so you're out there doing your best. You're trying to get the right people in the organization. You're trying to bring the right people in.
Mhm.
You're working hard at it. Passive dependency is really tough because you've got their bodies, but nothing inside. They're checked out. They're just doing what you said to do. And that's a tough thing to be paying experts for.
Now, part of that though is that, see, part of that, you may have the right person and you may turn them into somebody who's passively dependent. And we'll get to that in a future napkin. But because sometimes you actually do find somebody who would be really great, but you fumble the ball on how you interact with them. And as a result, they turn to go passively dependent.
Yeah.
Or they might be, again, they might just give you the minimum effort or whatever, but they're acting like they're working really hard. I mean, both of those are now being referred to these days as quiet quitting, which is really just employee disengagement with a new title on it, you
Yeah.
know?
Because people had quietly quit the previous term that we gave to it, which was just
Sure.
unengaged.
Yeah.
So let's talk about these 6 key attributes, because I think what happens is if we are focused on these attributes, we are, you know, hiring right, which is half the game.
Well,
So
hang on, before we get into that, can I add one more piece?
absolutely.
Okay, so if you want to get the people that you really want, okay, there's 3 things you need to do, okay? The first thing is to raise your standards. And I'll talk about that in a sec. The second thing is to get clear on what you want, and that's where the 6 attributes come in. And then the third one is to get to know them before you actually hire them. And that sounds obvious, but there's a way to get to know people that people don't realize. Okay, so before we get into those 6 things, what I wanted to do is just speak briefly on this notion of raising your standards. Does that work for you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, good. So when I talk about raising your standards, what would happen, Govind, if I only hired people that were potential partners or close allies? So I'm not hiring a person to do a job. I mean, I need a new receptionist. So it's like, well, I'm not going to offer a partnership position to my receptionist. Great. Don't hire somebody that doesn't have the potential to be that. In other words, unless I would actually see them growing into a partner or absolutely a close ally, just as trusted as a potential partner would be, they don't get in my doors. That's a higher standard. It's not, no, well, you know what, they're fine to do the job. And if I see somebody who's fine to do the job, but I know I'd never bring them in as a partner, the truth is, in a gut feel, you'll know. So if you wouldn't actually see a potential partnership path for them, they don't get in your doors. Now, does that mean that everybody gets in your doors gets to be a potential partner? No. Use that as a standard when you're hiring people. And if I don't have either a potential partner or a close ally, because guess what? Everybody in the company could be a close ally, whether or not I literally offer them a partnership. But they don't get in the door unless you do that. So what happens is, if I'm looking for a potential partner, I look differently and in different places than if I was just looking for somebody to fill a role. And they're like, yeah, but I need to hire 100 people. Great. So use strategies that actually get you access from a recruiting point of view to whatever the 100 potential candidates or 200 potential candidates, however many you need to actually get that. But then every single person's, you know what? Could this person be a potential partner? I need to know that, because if I don't bring that standard to the table, I'm not going to get what I want from my expertise-driven service-based company. Like, it's based on the people. So what if I don't bring that standard to the table? What I'm saying is, well, I know I'm supposed to give customer value, but this person's close enough and they'll get some value. Can you smell the mess you're making?
Yeah.
Hands? So literally you do that. Or I can do it. No, they're all about the customer, but there's no profit for me because they don't know they don't even think that way. They're just all about, doing good for others. and they just have no interest in actually protecting the company as well. So using that standard changes where you look and how you look, and that's critical.
It, it sounds simple, and somewhere out there, somebody's saying, "No, I need a cashier." What are you talking about, Michael? What are you talking about? I need someone who's gonna come in at, you know 4 to midnight on at and ring through sales. What are you talking about? A potential partner,
Perfect. So let's deal with, let's say I'm looking at high school students.
right?
Okay, and I'm dealing with high school students that have enough flexibility in their schedule that they could do that 4 to midnight shift a couple of days a week, or they might cover up some of my weekends or something like that. There's the people that hang out at the mall, and then there's the people that babysit. Which one would you call a potential partner?
People who babysit,
Right. In other words, I'm the types of
the
things
ones who are taking responsibility, right?
people
Like
that
that's what
want
we're
to take
talking about,
responsibility, but they're also focused on others, not just themselves.
right?
If I don't see volunteer experience, I could either see formal volunteer experience or I could see informal volunteer experience. A young man that's always helping his brother on things, or whoever. Like the bottom line is people that are interested in contributing to others rather than people that are just about themselves. People on group sports teams and that have been there long enough and are successful enough that they're not the star of the team, but they know the importance of the contributions of each person for the success of a team. People that have gone through Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or something where I know that they've actually been taught it's about giving to others, not just about themselves. Because remember, we all have a biological need to survive, but we also have this innate desire to thrive. I want somebody who's got at least a little bit of muscle on the thrive thing, because thriving is always about somebody else. Surviving is also about me or us. How do we protect ourselves? If I've got somebody who talks to me in game, but they've never actually had experience of actually contributing to others in meaningful ways, chances are that's exactly what I'm going to get at my work. So which person would you have as your cashier?
Yeah, one who wants to thrive.
And you can look at that. Now, does that mean that they have to be, 42 years old and become ready to be a partner? No. 16-year-old kid can pass muster for that role. Does that make sense?
But yeah, but what you're doing is wondering actively by and I like this, raising your standards, but you're wondering actively about whether or not that person's on path A or path B. And path A is thrive, adapt, and path B is just making it through the day, looking for beer money. And we look, we know that we know which one we'd rather have, right?
And
We want,
people that just want to pay they're good people. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just that that's not the standard I have when I've got an expertise-driven organization.
yeah,
Because it's the expertise that needs to grow. And if people aren't willing to grow, it's not. And if you're not interested in investing in yourself for the benefit of others, I'm not going to get what I want in terms of the value proposition for my customer, or it's going to be at the expense of myself, my profit, or it's going to be a lot harder to give them the professional growth that they want, which are now the three factors that we're looking at.
yeah. And I still, when you say expertise based, and I know what we're really talking about, expertise based businesses, but there is nobody who walks into a store or an establishment, whether even if it's a restaurant, that isn't looking for some information about the products and services that they're acquiring.
Totally agree.
And I mean, I was at a restaurant the other day. I ordered this salad that didn't really look spectacular on the menu, and I said something about it, and the server lit up and she said, "That's my favorite thing on the menu. It is so good. It is filling. I never get through it, but it is so good. You're gonna love this." That's different than, I don't know.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because my wife and I go to dinner a fair bit, and one of the things she will do, especially when we're in a new place, is she'll talk to the server and she'll ask him or her, "What's your favorite?" And she watches for their reaction when they share it. It's not what the item is, it's who delivers the item. And
Yeah.
that now she knows she's in the right place, or she just finds something and she figures, okay, this is a one-time trip. And sure enough, when she knows it's a one-time trip, it's like, yeah, lunch bag letdown, right?
Yeah.
Baloney. I mean, so you're in a situation, but when she sees somebody act, she's like, oh, I'm in the right
This
place.
is going to be
They're
great.
committed to their stuff. That means that this is probably going to be a great experience for us. And it shifts. Like it's fascinating to watch, and it's brilliant on her part.
Yeah. 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 No, I agree. Okay. So um, that was so raising your standards,
Yeah.
getting clear on what you want is the attributes, right?
Yeah. And
All right.
the thing that is the one thing I'm going to say is when we're talking about raising the standards, you really do want to change your approach. You want to set up for a higher caliber person, but you also have to be patient while being optimistic. So yes, you may not be finding the person that you want and stay with it and be optimistic that the right person is there. I promise you that patience combined with optimism will get you there. And the third part is to trust the process. Now, one of the things that we'll be launching for people, and by the time this series is available, we'll actually have a full hiring process available for people on how to actually do this. So there will be a link in whatever it is where however we set this up and make it available to people. There will be a link by the time we get there. It's not ready yet, but the link will actually give people access to the whole hiring protocol that we use when we're working with our clients, and it'll be basically done similar to a paint by numbers. You can actually just follow the process and get what you need as far as that's concerned. So when I say trust the process, we'll give you a process as far as
Yeah.
that's because hiring rate literally is half the game, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm finally ready to talk about those six things.
That's right. That's great. It's good to know. So now that we're there,
Okay.
let's talk about so there's six key attributes
Yeah.
uh, to to hiring right, and number one, and it's number one, clear thinking. What do you
Yes.
mean by clear thinking?
Okay. I'm in an expertise. Now remember that I keep saying this is an expertise-based business, and I agree with your comment that you want people thinking everywhere you go.
Yeah.
So I understand that, and I agree with that, and I'm still going to pound on the expertise-based business thing. So that's
Yeah, I understand,
fine.
and I'll keep on pulling you the other way. It's
I
okay.
have no problem with that, and we'll do the dance. So here's the thing: if I've got a services-based business that's based on the expertise of our people, muddled thinking is going to get in the way. And you can tell whether somebody's a clear thinker or whether they're a muddled thinker just by the nature of the questions that you ask them. But if I actively listen for that, there's two or three simple things you can do to help find that. And it and But if you don't know to look for it, you can end up with somebody whose thinking is just muddled. And it's just not like literally they could be a wonderful person. They might have a good memory, and as a result, they remember certain things and pass muster in an initial interview. But you're going to have a problem with these people because they can't grow, and there's always a chip missing. Like you don't just because somebody applies to work with you doesn't mean you have to take them. You don't have to take everybody that applies. You do want to pick the right people for your organization. I know some people that are brilliant when it comes to mechanical things, but conceptually they're not very strong. I know people who are conceptually incredible, but they're crappy at the mechanical side. So depending on, if I'm dealing with a skilled trade is based in expertise as well. But mechanical aptitude as part of that skilled trade may be a form of the expertise. Whereas in a consulting or in an engineering or like there's a lot of consulting based services where it's the thinking, whether it's architecture, engineering, healthcare, like a number of different things where it's not the mechanical piece, it's actually the conceptual thought that matters. Then that's the part of it I want. But I need to see somebody who can think their way clearly through it. Okay,
Yeah.
because without
But,
that,
but what
seriously, I
would
was running
you
the roadblocks.
But what would you say though? Like, I mean, somewhere out there, if somebody's saying, "Hey, nice thought, okay, Michael, but interviews are tough places, and sometimes people don't do well with them. Real clear thinkers can stumble in interviews. How do you understand these attributes in an interview environment?"
Well, a very easy way to tell whether I've got a clear thinker is give them an assignment, tell them to present it, and just see how organized they are. But so a lot of people, they'll give somebody an assignment, they'll ask them to do something in an interview, except they're
Hmm.
looking for whether they get the right answer. I'm looking for their thought process in getting the right answer. I'll give you an example. One of the clients that we worked with was dealing with, they were computer guys. Okay. So they had men and women who would actually go out there and be the, gender neutral computer person for the company. The problem is if you send a computer person out to somebody's company and they've got 75 staff and they've got, 100 different machines and, they got the peripherals and the printers and all the other stuff as well as the servers and that. Invariably, computer technicians take longer than everybody expects. Just because it's way more complex than the initial issue or concern was presented. Okay, so they find that this one, what looks like a small problem is really four problems that led to the one problem not working. Now, that it's one thing if that's the case. It's a whole different thing if the person just can't think their way through the server and the things. So one of the elements we had was we had one of the partners would actually pay for an individual to come in on a Saturday morning. They got the agreement of one of their clients who was a mortgage company. They said, you know how to block off things to protect our information, so there's no private information being shared. But yes, you can use our network, the sterile parts of our network to actually test the person. Then what they do is they'd put certain things in the log and they'd make them do certain things. And literally, they're paying them for this exercise and they just watch and see how the person navigates their way through. Are they navigating their way through in a very clear, organized way, or are they jumping all over the place and really not very organized with it? Literally, they could tell within that 4-hour time slot exactly, who they had and whether they wanted the person or not. As far as that's concerned, I've seen other people that actually say, "Here's a design. What are the 5 different flaws in it?" Or show me how you'd actually assess whether this system can work, whether it's an electrical system or an HVAC system, or whether it's architectural something, or how would you do a differential diagnostic on something? I mean, in each different industry, there's different ways of doing that. And so just by doing a simple exercise, it gets pretty obvious fairly quickly if you know to look for it. That's why putting it down is half the battle.
Love it. Love it. And we always do this. We always, always, always do some sort of evaluation or assignment in every role. And it makes such a big difference. We give people the time to do it. And sometimes it's homework, other times it's right there, solve a problem. We don't care whether the answer is right or not. We don't tell them that. Of course, I sort of am right now, but regardless, we don't tell them whether or not the answer is unimportant. It's the thinking. How are they thinking and how are they presenting it? And that goes to number 2. I mean, I think those two go together, right? Hunger to learn.
Yep. Yeah, voracious hunger to learn and grow. It's like there's people that really want to learn, and then there's people that say they want to learn and are busy wanting to show you how smart they are. Okay, the people who want to learn tend to do better with feedback that includes something that needs to be corrected. They're also more
Feedback is the essential pillar to learning, right? I mean, if learning doesn't exist without feedback, you need feedback. And people who are hungry to learn want feedback.
Well, okay, so I'm going to disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Nobody wants feedback. People want
Is that
attention.
no, 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 no.
But we
Nobody
don't
wants to be
want,
bad. I didn't
really,
say want to
nobody
be
likes
bad.
it, that they're open to it. There's a,
Yeah, no, but learning doesn't exist without feedback.
oh, I totally
It just
agree.
doesn't.
Like, unless you learn, you see how you did, you can't tell. There's a reason why you
Exactly.
keep scoring a basketball game. The score is too high. I mean, I can tell in a hockey game, 1-0. I counted. Good. It was 2-1. I can keep track. 89 to 78. Sorry, I'm watching the game. I can't keep track. How many twos and how many threes and how many single, So yes, tracking is there, and the feedback is important. But I'm more interested in the person that everybody will say they want to learn. Everybody. So if you ask them if they want to learn, they'll say it. You could get clear on this very quickly. It's like, well, tell me the last thing you learned and how did you learn it? And what is it that you're actively looking at right now? And the people that really aren't that interested in learning will fumble on the question and you'll get some sort of generic thing. Whereas somebody who's actually really hungry to learn, they'll tell you very specifically what they're doing. And you can, like, it is so easy to tell what's real versus what's claimed. Because everybody will claim to want to learn and grow. Everybody will. Like, I've yet to find one single person who no, I'm not interested in that. Seriously. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that they are. So the key is you just have to go one step past it and it gets obvious fairly quickly. the key is that there's so much that they're trying to do, and I'm trying to get the right person, and they seem to have the right skills, and boy, did they do a good job in their last employment. But so I'll accept their answer that they're hungry to learn and grow, and I won't bother to test it. That's where people make the mistake, is they take one step too short as opposed to going one step beyond and actually really finding out.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with clear thinking. You test the clear thinking, you test the hunger to learn.
Right.
And and look, this third one is a big one for me. Curiosity, right? A curious mind. Again, it falls in sequence. Clear thinking, hunger to learn, a curious mind. That's the third attribute. How do we test that?
Just ask them, how did you get into that last job? What was it that really intrigued you? And what is it about this job that catches your attention? And um, what are some of the things that I don't know, just what are some of the things that really you're interested in exploring? And again, I'll
Yeah.
either get vague answers or I'll get specific answers. Okay. Do you use AI? I mean, we're seeing and hearing so much about AI. If somebody completely just ignores it, there could be a lack of curiosity there, or it could just be that they're not lined up with a particular profession or trade. And you'll find that there's less curiosity about AI in some of the trades, even though I'm dealing with a lot of expertise in the trades. So I wouldn't necessarily ask that there. But in some of the professions, I might ask it, because I got to tell you, these days, it's almost shoved down our throats. It's like,
Mhm.
if you're not at least checking it out or paying attention, there's no curiosity there, or you're so overwhelmed with something else. So,
And couldn't you even just say, "Hey, do you have any questions for me?" A curious mind
oh,
has questions
absolutely.
for you, right? That
Yeah.
that's that's a very simple test in that environment. And here's the habit that I think everybody should be hearing about these attributes. And I want to make sure I'm following this properly, Michael. You're saying the attributes one thing. Don't just say, "Hey, are you a clear thinker?" You
No.
test it.
Well, you
Are you
can't,
hungry to
because
learn?
everybody's a clear thinker. So what does that mean? They don't know that they're a clear thinker. They don't. The clearest thinkers might actually give you a false negative. Well, I was confused about something the other day. Well, that's because they're way more self-aware. So I might get false positives and false negatives on it. So
Yeah.
these are not
So it's
things
not
that
about the question; it's about the test.
yeah.
So here's here's
But
one
even
that's
even with number three, this is the exception to that. If I'm not getting anything or I can't get a good, what are you curious about right now? What are some
Mhm.
of the things that sort of catch your attention?
Yeah.
And I'll get somebody that either goes, I don't know, or I'll go, well, one of the things that I'm really curious about is, and it's whatever. And then next thing you know, you're into a subject that sort of lights somebody up, or ask them, what is it that you're passionate about? What are you really interested in with these days? And what is it about that that interests you? And then you're listening for, is somebody again trying to show how smart they are, or is somebody really engaging in something that really has their attention? Because
Yeah.
curious people are curious about lots.
And really curious people will ask you what you think about it when they're talking about it.
Totally.
Isn't this interesting? Blah 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 blah. What do you think? And is that, I don't know anything about that. Whatever. But really curious people will ask you what you think about something that's got them perplexed or interested, engaged, or otherwise.
Which speaks to the underlying issue we're playing with here, because there's the actual content of the subject matter, and that's where most people play, is at the content of what we're talking about. What's way more interesting is the underlying dynamics that lie beneath that content. So curiosity is a perfect example of an underlying dynamic, or access to, I mean, we're process consultants, okay, in our firm. And so we look at what processes give people access. Well, the content's the content. Curiosity is a process type thinking. It's a process type thing. A clear mind is a requirement to do that. So I watch for the curious mind rather than just the content. Now you can get carried away with the content because what you're talking about is so interesting. But what I want you to do is just to stop and look and say, well, how curious were they when they talked about that? Or were they busy trying to give me the right answer?
Yeah.
As long as you ask yourself those questions, it starts to get obvious. It's actually not that hard to see.
No, no, you're absolutely right. So, number four, clear thinking, hungry to learn, curious mind. Now we go to humble outlook.
Yes.
What does that mean?
If I'm better than everybody else, this is not going to go well the minute I'm in a team. If I'm busy trying to prove to you how right I am, I'm not going to do well as part of a team. If I honestly believe that there's others that are just as good as me or better, or people where I can learn from, humility, is one of the key attributes of the most powerful leaders. Hubris gets in the way. And so a humble outlook is the difference between an effective executive and a hired gun. Because mercenaries are great at what they do and they know it, and they're better than others and they know it. And how well do those people fit on your team? Where somebody could be really, really good, but they're always looking for how they can contribute to other people. They're always looking for what they can learn from other people. And as a result, they don't think they know everything. And it's again not hard to watch for. Now, how humble are you? Like, there's no way to answer that
I don't
question.
know there's a
Any
quantifier to that.
any valid answer to it. So I'd never ask that. I just listen. What's the biggest thing what was the most surprising thing you learned this year, and from whom? And it's interesting when you dance with the whole conversation around learning. There's lots of access to stuff like that, and you can tell, am I about me or am I about we?
Mm.
And somebody who's more about we is others centric as opposed to self centric, which is probably a bad way to say it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I really think I really liked what you said, that humility is such a key to teamwork. And I'm reminded by the great there's a great interview with Kobe Bryant. And Kobe is on Black Entertainment Television. They did this mastermind series where they brought these great athletes and artists and people, and they do this sort of role modeling thing when BAT came on. And the interview starts off, it's right out the gate. Interviewer starts off and says, I've interviewed thousands of people, and they fall into one of two camps. They're either afraid to lose or they have to win. Which one are you? Kobe takes this long and says, neither. I'm just here to learn. Like, I look at every moment as an opportunity to learn, because if I'm too afraid to lose, then I'm a slave to that emotion. If I have to win, I'm a slave to that emotion. I'm always living in some other time than right now. But when I'm here, I can be here to learn, and every opportunity is an opportunity to learn. And that's where I need to be. And when I'm there, I'm great. That humility, that willingness to do the work and be present is really huge. And I think it really leads to number 5, right? You talked about it right up the tip. Humility is the key to teamwork. Number 5 is commitment to contribute. It's this, it's sort of like one leads to another, right?
If I'm not willing to contribute to others, I may be so caught up in my own survival that I'm not actually going to be useful on the team. If
Yeah.
I'm interested in committing, like if I commit to contribute to other people, you know what, then I'm useful on the team. Because if I'm unwilling to really, because guess what? It's not going to, teams are never equal. Different people contribute at different levels at different times, depending on what the need is. And let's say you and I are on a team together and there's 2 other people, all 4 of us are there. You know what? There may be one time when your expertise is needed a little bit more. There may be a different time when my expertise is needed a little more. There might be another time when you and I, our collective expertise actually carries the day. And it could be a different time when the other 2, their expertise, and nobody keeps track. You can't keep track, because if you keep track, you go crazy. So you need people that they just have a commitment to contribute. And you can read that. It's not hard to read.
And commitment to contribute is different than um, a need to be heard, or a need to, there's some
Yeah, I need to
people,
show how smart I am by saying how
right?
much I know out of some pretense of contribution.
Exactly. And there's so much of that out there. And we've all been in a meeting, we've all been in a situation where somebody just has to put in their 2 cents just to make sure that everybody knows they're there, and everybody knows how important they are, or how smart they are, or that they're in the room, right?
Yeah, sometimes a real contribution could just be quietly asking a question that allows the other person to connect with their own skill. done behind the scenes or something like that. Like, or, doing something that nobody notices and they know nobody ever will, but it gets done because it's what needs to get done. I
Yeah,
mean,
and I think this really goes into also a commitment to contribute is leads to this number six, which is open to others' contributions, because that's so important. There's so many quiet experts in an organization, and the organizations that elevate the quiet experts really do well, like really do well. So a commitment to contribute, but also being open to eliciting and welcoming, making it easier for those quiet experts to speak is really important,
well,
right?
the thing I find is a lot of times when people are committed to contributing to others, it's like the person that always wants to buy for other people, but they hate it when somebody buys for them. Okay. What you find is that really buying for others or contributing to others in whatever way is really called keeping ahead of the scorecard. And if they contribute to me, it's now I may owe them something. So you find that this is one of those areas where you get hidden insecurities quite often. And sometimes I've got somebody that's ace on the other five, and they may need to be supported or controlled. Because if they can't allow for the contributions of other people, they're never going to grow. Because the
Yeah.
truth is, together we really are stronger. And if we're not together, we aren't. And so if I need to be contributing, but I'm not allowing for anybody else to contribute to me, then I'm not allowing for balance in the equation, or I'm not allowing for others to feel good about things as well. And it's fascinating how people get stuck in that, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, it really is an interesting phenomenon.
So today we've talked about raising your standards and getting clear on what you want. And we've talked about the six key attributes: clear thinking, hunger to learn, curious mind, humble outlook, commitment to contribute, and open to others' contributions. And the third thing that's really important in this hiring smart dynamic is getting to know them first.
Yes. And the reason that you want to get to know them in depth, like here's the thing. You need to get to know the whole person. One of the things that people do is they actually look for the skills, the job related skills and attributes first. And they figure, well, I got to understand what the character is for the person and all that stuff as well. We do the opposite. We get to know the character of the person first and find out who they are and where they're going and all that. And we see if there's a fit that way first before we actually get into the skills. I mean, yeah, we'll check to make sure on the surface that we seem to have enough of the right skills. But I've seen too many times when people get really excited about the skills that somebody has or the experience that they've got specifically that would solve our problem. And then we call any behavioral issues they may have or character issues they may have as just idiosyncrasies, and nobody's perfect. Everybody's got their own uniqueness in their personality. Whereas if you actually look at the character of the individual first, you may go, I don't care what their skills are. I don't know what their skills are yet, but there's no way I want that on my team. Okay, let's say I find that I've got a mercenary. Even then it doesn't matter how good they are.
Mhm.
Whereas if I find somebody who's incredibly skilled and they can actually generate results twice and three times more than everybody else, and then later I find out, well, they seem to have these mercenary type attributes, but I'm so enamored with their skills, I actually overlook the other side. Like if I don't take the time to get to know somebody, I will bring people on my team that aren't quite a fit. And what I find is that 80% of the time when somebody has to be let go, it's character issue, not a skills issue. I mean, every now and then there's a skills issue. People claim that they're better than they are, and somebody didn't check quite thoroughly enough. But most of the time, it's because they couldn't work with the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So if I don't take the time to get to know them and really understand what they're about, I will pay for that privilege.
So
Shortcut.
how do you do that? What do you do?
Well, the first thing I do is I literally look for character first. Okay.
Mm.
The second thing, the more senior it is, you know what? Go to dinner with them. You know,
And invite their partner. Invite.
absolutely. And we do that. We invite their
Yeah.
partner, bring my partner, and next thing you know, we're talking about things, or go to something that's not necessarily straight business and just get a sense of who they are.
Yeah.
And the higher the rate, like if you're hiring somebody at the VP level, there's no way you hire them without doing those types of things, because you really got to get a sense for people. I know one person that goes golfing with people now, time of year, and not everybody's good at golf. But I do, when people are, it's amazing. There are certain sports where you will show who you are in that sport. I've seen people that play tennis with people because they heard they were good at tennis or whatever, and I like there's lots of different. And I'm not saying you have to go run out and do a sport with people, but I got to tell you, when you sit with people over lunch or dinner, you'd be amazed at what you discover. The other thing is don't have it be one interview and hire. Like actually take two or three interviews, especially if it's a larger mandate. And because who shows up on the third interview is who I'm interested in. That's who I actually will get. We had a young man that we were hiring. It was down in New Orleans, Louisiana, and it was for a intermediate accounting person for this staff accountant for this company. It was a healthcare based company, and the first interview he showed up in a three-piece suit. Young man, very professional. Second time, same three-piece suit, no tie, open collar, fine. Third interview, jeans and a t-shirt. And because he figured he had the job if he's being invited back three times. So what we are very clear about is who we're going to get is the guy that shows up to the third interview, not the first. I've also seen situations where in the first interview, we meet with somebody and they're very polished. Second interview, same, not only their personal mannerisms, but also, how they conduct themselves, their dress and all that stuff. Third interview, same thing. And it's like, okay, I see consistency here. And if you see it in three different venues at three different times, you're in a situation where you can start to see who you got. So that's another aspect of getting to know them. It's not,
And it's not always level or downhill, right? Sometimes
no,
people grow,
it's
right?
better as you go. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that gets really interesting because
Right.
they might be hesitant about you. And as they get more relaxed with you, they let themselves show a little bit more because they feel more comfortable. And we actually did that
Right.
when we were hiring a salesperson in Calgary for a design firm. And that person in the first meeting, they were very stiff and that, but there was enough that we saw that was like, okay, well, this is worth another. And I was with the owner when we were interviewing this person. Second meeting was again, and this woman settled down and she was better. The third meeting, the owner suggested we go to dinner, and so the three of us went to dinner. And in the third meeting, this person just blossomed, and in fact, the owner hired her, and she was brilliant. She was absolutely brilliant for this team at that time in their career development, and everything worked out really well, way better than they would have expected. And it was interesting because I was talking to the owner, and the owner said, when we met them the first time, I really was wondering whether we should even have a second meeting. And I'm so glad we did.
Right.
So they do go both ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot here, but the most important part is hiring smart is really important, and hiring right is half of the game. And this is a great framework for that. Thank you, Michael.
Welcome.